Hello YouTube. Today I'm taking you back to the forest to talk to you about the years I spent as a Gymcel and how they made me miserable. Because I want to make sure that you watching me can avoid that predicament and escape that fate if possible. Now, before we start, I also want to make clear that when I talk about Gymcel, I mean a very specific type of individual. Nowadays, the term is used as an insult to depreciate the passion and love that people put into the gym and into lifting, which to me makes no sense, because if you're someone who has decided that this fitness thing is your hobby and that you want to spend hours into it because it makes you stronger physically but also mentally, that is a net positive. That is never something that could be misconstrued as a bad behavior that needs to be shamed. So the people who are misusing the term Gymcel to put down people who are passionate about fitness are, in my opinion, dishonest and are doing everyone a disservice, because we now live in an age where the average person spends hours looking at TikTok, Instagram, Netflix. These people are rarely shamed for that, even though that hobby is entirely non-productive, it is completely passive, and it results in nothing but just blind consumerism. Whereas if you're someone who has decided to reject all of that and to embrace self-improvement, suffer, put in effort and time, then you should be someone who is glorified. Then you should be someone who is proud of what they do, because you're rejecting this rotten part of the modern wood, and so you should be an example for everyone. I believe that the type of people who use Gymcel to attack these rebels, these modern rebels I just described, in reality are revealing much more about themselves than they think. Because if you believe that someone who tries hard and who loves fitness is someone worthy of ridicule, it most likely means that you're the type who's not able to have that type of passion and to put that type of energy into something that you care about. And so, as a defense mechanism, I guess, you try to attack those who are doing something right because you're incapable of replicating that behavior. And it's something I've noticed with people. It's the type of individual that think that calling someone a try-hard is a sick burn, like it means something, like you did something. Why would trying hard at anything in life be a bad thing? The only people who think like this are people who've never tried hard at anything, aka... Sorry about that, the phone fell on me like a dead tree, which is what happens when you decide to record in nature, I guess. So as I was saying, the type of people who use try hard as an insult tend to be lazy individuals who have no drive themselves, and so they project that sentiment of failure they have onto the people that are doing that thing that they wish they could be doing, because these types make them look worse in comparison naturally, and so they try to pull them down by resorting to sarcasm. I've personally never seen it work. I've never seen someone who's doing tremendous in life being called a try-hard and deciding afterwards, oh yeah, you know what? I'm going to stop doing this thing that improves me just so that I can be at the same level of mediocrity as you. That has never worked. Or at least it doesn't work on adults. I've seen it work on kids. I remember being young in middle school, and all of the kids who had bad grades would always try to pull us, the hyperachievers, down by calling us nerds, as if it was going to somehow coax us into giving up our good grades. Sadly, I've had friends who eventually did fall for that trap because they wanted to be seen as cool, so they stopped studying. But again, why would you take advice or follow the words of someone that you can visibly see with your eyes is not doing good in life? This is a warning that I expand to you guys, because since I'm going to talk about Gymcelling, I want to make sure that you don't get manipulated into being mediocre by people who misuse the terms times and times again. These are crabs in a bucket. They try to pull you back into the bucket, and if you give them the attention they crave, you've already lost, because you've already wasted your time with someone who is not worth your time. So instead, this is what I describe as Gymcelling. To me, Gymcelling is a form of obsession with fitness and the gym that is extremely prevalent with young men, usually teenagers, and that ends up being a net negative in their life, because the practice of lifting weight becomes everything that they care about, and it takes over everything else. This is exactly what happened to me, and so I want to share my experience with you so as to make sure you don't make the same mistakes. So this is going to be a bit of a story time. I started lifting and I started really caring about this fitness thing when I was 15. And at the start, it was because I wanted to get bigger and I also wanted to be more confident in my body, which are perfectly reasonable and natural ways to start. Most young men start for reasons that look like these. And at the start, it was a tremendous improvement in my life because it was a very, very healthy change from the past me. The past me was spending all his time at school, and when I wasn't at school, I would play video games, which wasn't healthy at all. And so when I slashed video games and I replaced them with fitness and training, I immediately became a better person. That is just natural. And it also allowed me, when I grew older, to avoid bad frequentations. And that is a thing that is not talked about enough. But fitness and discipline has a tendency to protect you from the type of people you don't want in your life, because these are people who usually cannot align with these values. And so naturally, they're going to be repulsed by you. So all of the bad crowds in high school, all of the people who would smoke and do drugs, I couldn't relate to these people. So I would never be friends with them. I would never hang out with them. And so I never ended up doing the type of things that down the line could have made my life much more difficult, like getting addicted to substances, for example. I never experienced that. I never even smoked a cigarette. I never re-smoked weed because I was dead on fitness, and because if you want to be good at sports or at bodybuilding, you can't at the same time do drugs or drink alcohol, at least not in vast quantities. Naturally, I was protected. I had that protective bubble around me. And that was tremendous. So instead of wasting hours playing all of these MMORPGs that I used to sink thousands of hours into, instead of spending time with people that I didn't even really like, I would come home, I would do my homework, and then I would train. And this was my routine. And as a young man, these were some of my favorite years because this is the time that I spent that really molded me. It molded me into the man that I became today. And so I wouldn't recall that Gymcelling. Some people would point that out and say, well, you weren't partying in high school, so you're a Gymcel. No, I think that I was doing something proper. And naturally, this also meant that I had to pass up on a ton of social opportunities, but I don't regret it because these sacrifices allowed me to build a very strong character for myself and also to figure out what I wanted out of life very early on. So that once I was already in my 20s, I was already on the track. I already knew where I was going, whereas a ton of my peers who spent that time partying instead had to do that groundwork afterwards when they were already past their teens, and this makes it much more difficult because now I'm in my early 30s, and while my life is not set yet, I already have most of what I want, and I already know that from now I can just build up. Most people I know that I went to school with are just starting with the foundations. So they're going to accomplish most of the things that we would say is needed in an adult life in their 40s. And by that time, it might already be too late. So if you are a young adult watching me right now and you get peer pressured into being social when you know you should be spending that time on yourself alone, take it from me, an adult that has done that and can tell you that you're making the right choice. What you're doing right now is a very sound investment for your future. Never let anyone shame you for doing that or for actually caring about you first. I really believe that over-socialization can be as detrimental as under-socialization in teens, because then you end up being reliant on other people for validation, for identity, and so you never truly feel comfortable with yourself. How many times do I meet people, adults my age, who are like this, where they don't seem even quite sure of who they are or what they like. And that is an uncanny side because it's not attractive. As an adult, neediness, insecurity is not attractive at all. It's not a good look. And so good luck attracting someone, a strong partner, to actually form a family if you can't even have the ability to be attractive in the eyes of random people you come across on a daily basis. So the earlier you can start with figuring out what the fuck is going on with your life and your personality, and the better it is. However, this, what I just described, is only a portion of self-improvement. And that portion of it, that solitude that you actually spend in order to get something back, can become a trap, because if you get used to it, if you end up zeroing out on this specific portion of the improvement, then you can end up using it as an excuse to never leave your comfort zone. And that's exactly what happened to me. Because I was naturally very introverted and I wasn't a social beast, the time I spent by myself felt extremely pleasing because it felt like I was at home. It felt perfectly natural and aligned with my nature. And so I doubled down because it felt just right. The more time went by, the more I would sacrifice on social interactions to spend more time at the gym training, and the more I realized that I was getting caught in a cycle where I was starting to use the gym as an excuse not to hang out instead of as something that needs to be done in order for me to become better. And this is the moment where I started to take it too far and I started to turn into a Gymcel because I would push away opportunities to hang out with people even when I knew that these were good people that I could have liked within healthy environments. And now I was starting to look at self-improvement the wrong way because I was so obsessed with that gym portion of it that I lost sight of the fact that social skills and becoming more socially apt is also a part of self-improvement. And actually, and I know it can be shocking coming from someone who has a fitness channel, I would argue that in everyday life, social skills are much more important than fitness skills because social interactions make up a large portion of our existence. You might spend 2 hours at the gym every day if you train every day. That still is greatly outclassed by the amount of time that you're supposed to spend interacting with people. And this is something that a lot of Gymcels find out the hard way. Well, they finally get the body of their dreams, they're jacked, but they realize that once they're put in a social setting, they're a complete spug because they never trained their social skills, and so that good-looking body serves absolutely no purpose. Look, being jacked and being muscular doesn't solve social anxiety. It doesn't mean that people are going to like you. Get that thought out of your head. And I know it's something that modern meme culture tries to push back against. I've seen young men push the idea that if you're gorgeous as a man, then everything is going to go right. Your life is already set on track. That's not true, right? That might be true on the internet, in your tiny spheres where you spend all of your time, but in real life, I know dudes who have everything you think matters. They're tall, they're good looking, they're jacked, and their life is not going the way they want because socially speaking, they have the emotional capacity of a spoon. And that's because they've stopped challenging themselves. They're sticking to the one thing they're really good at, which is the gym, and anything else that makes them uncomfortable, like talking to other people, talking to women, they dodge entirely. I was the exact same way. I was very good at fitness. I had a very nice body, but with people, I was a catastrophe. Some would call me cringe. I vividly remember interactions I had with people where I could sense I was making people uncomfortable because I didn't have that back and forth. I didn't have any understanding of the way you're supposed to carry out a conversation. And so with girls, it was also not going well at all. I was girlfriendless, kissless, whatever you want to call it, for a long ass time, even though, according to the girls, I was cute. These girls in my classes liked me, liked the way I looked, but then they would interact with me and they'd be like, holy fuck, the guy is a spug, I don't want to date the dude. And so I had friends who were much shorter, much uglier, not fit at all, who were dating gorgeous girls in my classes because they had that chit chat, they had that ability to actually relate to other humans that I lacked entirely, because every single time I had an opportunity to get better at it, I would dodge it to spend more time at the gym thinking, oh, this will solve my problem. Well, naturally, it solved absolutely nothing. And so I was entering this paradoxical cycle where my body and my mind were getting stronger, my character was becoming tougher, but it did not have a positive impact on my social life. If anything, it was negative because I wasn't able to leverage what I had gotten. And so I was getting frustrated because I was feeling like I was doing all of that for nothing since it had no tangible impact. And in a sense, it's not surprising. It's because I had gotten rigid. All of the discipline I needed to stick to that hard training and to improve meant that I was highly scheduled. I was sticking to that schedule on a day-to-day basis, but I was not able to be flexible enough so as to be able to actually enjoy life. And now that discipline that I prided myself upon, that I spent so much time developing, had become a negative factor in my life because it had turned into a straitjacket. I was so disciplined that I was not able to exist outside of that discipline and outside of that regimented existence I had imposed onto myself. And so I had become, before I even knew it, a slave to the gym, where it was no longer me who leveraged the gym to become a better man. I was now a creature of habit that was not able to exist outside of that comfort zone that I had built inside my own bedroom where I would train, which you would think would make me realize that something was wrong. But with most Gymcel's, the thing that we all have or had in common was that it also makes you delusional in the sense that you're not able to face the reality of your situation. So for me, I remember that when I was in that predicament, instead of realizing, okay, you're going down the wrong path and this is not healthy for you, I instead started to develop a disgust for normal people, or I would look down on those who had healthy social lives because I thought they were wasting their time. So in my head, I would make fun of them and say, oh, look at all of these normies partying it up and spending time with their loved ones when they could just be training instead. Like, we're getting dangerously close to the I spent years forging my mind and training with the iron to become a samurai type meme that you see people use to make fun of neckbeards. Gymcel's and neckbeards share very similar characteristics. Just because you so happen to not have a double chin and post on Reddit and you actually have abs does not make you immune to the type of social autism that you might have developed on your own volition because of your own habit. And I know that for a fact because it's exactly what I did to myself as well. I was not born a Gymcel. I became a Gymcel because when you turn yourself into a social recluse, even if for the sake of self-improvement, there are direct consequences to your life. And these consequences, for me, were made evident by the fact that I could see that these people who I thought were wasting their time were actually much happier than I was. They looked to be much more balanced than I was. And instead of realizing that maybe I should copy them, I tried to cope by telling myself that, oh, well, happiness, this happiness that I desired, was a waste of time, right? Happiness is for people with no purpose, right? The lone wolves, the real warriors, the chiefs amongst us, we don't care about happiness. We only care about paving our ways and becoming stronger. Well, that might sound very good on paper or on the internet with all of these alpha memes, but in real life, when you actually live that existence, it's not that fun at all, especially when you consider the fact that you don't need to be that extreme. You don't need to be that like all or nothing when it comes to fitness. You can actually greatly enjoy your existence, have friends, have fun, have passions outside of the gym, and still have a tremendous body, still be strong, and still improve year after year. If anything, the type of people that make it far in fitness are that type I just described. They're the balanced ones. The ones that burn it and who just go all out for a few years, do it only for a few years because it's not sustainable, both mentally and physically. And I know it's in complete contradiction with this no pain, no gain mindset that's very prevalent in the West, where you're told that the only way forward is to suffer. The only way to succeed is the grind. It's to spend years in solitude in a grimy gym by yourself and your thoughts. And then at some point you emerge from that and you conquer the wood. That also is a complete myth. It sounds good, it sounds badass, but in reality, the only thing you do when you do that is you stunt yourself. But the problem is that since, as I said, this Gymcel lifestyle is so romanticized on social media, you're very unlikely to have had someone sit you down and explain these things to you. For example, logically, why would making yourself miserable allow you to reach your dreams faster? Why would suffering extra do anything extra for you? It makes no sense. It's a sadomasochistic type of perspective that is so prevalent in our spheres, but if you think about it for 2 seconds, you'll realize that actually it's the opposite. If you are happy and fulfilled while you pursued your dream of fitness, you would likely get much higher chances of accomplishing whatever it is you want. And this is why I think that all of this pseudo-hardcore nonsense of fighting your demons in the gym is so dangerous. Because I know it appeals to teenagers, it appeals to the male brain, likely because it tends to normalize the struggle you're facing. You are facing difficulties in life, we all do. But instead of looking at these difficulties as problems to navigate via methods that are a little bit more subtle, they'll turn into demons instead. So now it's you versus your problems. It turns into this almost physical battle that I guess, justifies you suffering because the only way to win the battle is to suffer, it is to fight. But the issue is that life is not a fucking video game. You're not in a manga and you're not facing the bane of evil that wants to take over your kingdom. You're facing your own brain demons. It's your own mental health that you're battling. So if you turn it into an adversarial relationship against yourself and against your own mental health, well, is it really any surprise that you come out of it worse, that you come out of it even more damaged? This is why I think that this almost worship of suffering is a misapplication of self-improvement. It's because not everything needs to be a battle. I know that as a man, it's appealing to you. This verbiage appeals to the male brain because we like battles, right? We don't like therapy. We don't like to sit down and talk about our feelings. We would much rather slash them with a cut. Okay, great, I get it. I'm the exact same way. But does it make a positive impact on your life? Look at the mental health of men nowadays. Are we doing better? Are we improving? Or are we just spiraling downwards with this silly attempt at fighting the demons that we should have maybe made friends with in the first place? And that's also something that should be logical. If you push back against your emotions and you demonize them and you elect them as the enemy, what are the chances you'll be able to make peace with them? And what are the chances that they'll just come back stronger? Because this is what happens to repressed emotions and mental trouble. It comes back. And when it comes back, it's reinforced. And that is especially true if you use these emotions as fuel, which is what a lot of young male teenagers are doing, where they feel sad or angry, but instead of dealing with the root of that problem, they try to use that anger and sadness to fuel their sessions in order to become more muscular, which is something that I've done, and I'm very familiar with that feeling. I understand that it feels great to power yourself with these emotions because it makes you feel like you're in control, and better, it makes you feel like they're finally serving a purpose. But understand one thing. If you use these emotions as fuel, and this is what keeps you going, what are the chances that these emotions will be resolved? And what are the chances, again, that they're just going to stick around because you've reinforced within your own self that you now need these emotions to function? And this is the paradox of gymcelling. You started lifting because you wanted to be a better person outside of the gym, but it failed because eventually the gym itself became your goal. And since now performance in the gym and getting a bigger, stronger body is all you care about, you're going to sacrifice anything that gets in the way of that ideal, anything that exists outside of the gym, in order to achieve that thing that in the first place was only supposed to help you in your day-to-day life. And you'll justify it by telling yourself that you're grinding and that if you just keep at it, even if it's making you miserable now, eventually things will become better. But since you started to push away the things that would have made you happy to accomplish that future happiness will never happen. And worse than that, the thing that you're sacrificing all of that for, the gym, will eventually also lose its flavor. It just turns into a chore. And I remember when it happened to me because it's that time where I realized that I no longer looked forward to my training sessions, and I now was only using my training sessions as an excuse to not hang out with other people because that made me even more anxious. So when I was in college in France, I would have people who would want to hang out with me and get to know me better, and I would always turn them down, even though deep down I wanted to spend time with them. But it had become almost a reflex where my natural reaction to people trying to get closer to me was to push them away because I had the gym. I had to go train at the gym. I vividly remember probably one of my top 5 cringiest moments in my existence. I had a cute girl invite me out for drinks when I was in my second year of college. And I liked that girl. And when she offered to come take me to this bar so that we could spend time together, what flew out of my mouth was, "No, sorry, it's pasta time." I shit you not. It's pasta time. Like, oh, I have to come home because I have to cook and eat pasta. What the fuck was wrong with me? Well, I was socially stunted. It's what happens to you when you spend so much time bettering the body that you forget that the body is just a fucking vessel. And then you end up an imbecile. and also a hostage of sorts, because I also remember that I had back then a constant feeling of anxiety and dread because I was always afraid of losing what I had built. So the gym had me by the balls. I thought to myself, oh, if I miss just one session, all of it will be for nothing. All of it will be wasted. And naturally, if you have a functioning brain, you know that this is nonsense. Your gains, your muscles don't just disappear like this. You can take breaks. You can take a day off here and there. But back then, I was physically incapable of doing that. Taking a day off would make me spiral mentally. It would make me sick to my stomach, even though logically there was no reason for that. But it's something that I had done to myself. It's a compulsion I had built within my own brain, and I was now completely incapable of letting go of it. And it stayed with me for a very, very long time, that compulsion, because I remember that even when I moved to the US, it came with me on the plane. And so I have two stories to let you know how much of an obsessive compulsive jerk-off I had become. So the first one was in Spain, where my family lives. And I remember one day, for a reason, my mom grounded me because I didn't listen to her. And she knew that you couldn't really ground me because I was not going to go out. So what she did is she locked the door to the gym, so I couldn't access my weights. And I remember that I think I had a meltdown. I started crying. Not being able to access my weights for one day made me think that my life was going to end. That's how bad it had gotten. Then the second time was, I think 5 years ago. I was in the US, I had met my wife, we were dating, and we took a weekend to Chicago. It was cool, it was to discover a new city. What did I spend my time doing? I spent my time researching local gyms to make sure I wouldn't miss a day. I was so obsessed, I couldn't spend one weekend just enjoying myself with my wife. And eventually it turned out that I found a gym, and I spent the 2 days of my vacation going to the gym instead. And God bless my wife, she was very patient and she understood that I had something going on in my head. But back then I thought it was normal. I thought I was doing something right. I thought, and I justified it to myself by saying, well, I'm dedicated. This is what it takes. People who make it, people who get very good physiques, that's how they live their life. They never miss a day. They're obsessed with it. There's a difference between being dedicated to the gym and being obsessed with the gym. One is healthy, the other one is called being a Gymcel. And this is exactly what I was, a Gymcel. I was a Gymcel from the age of 18 to maybe 22, 23, because the gym had entirely taken over my life, which is nonsensical because the gym is supposed to improve your life. So if it now replaces everything else, it's literally a net negative. You would be better off not training, because it doesn't stop at a mental compulsion and obsession. It also affected my body because I was essentially in an abusive relationship with the gym, or even when I was hurt, even when I broke my ribs, I couldn't take time off. I mentally couldn't. And so I forced myself to go into the gym times and times again, up to a day where it wasn't even fun anymore. I did not like the gym. I dreaded going. When I was there, I kept looking at the time. That's a dead giveaway. No one who likes training looks at the time. The only reason nowadays why I check the clock in the gym is to see how much time I get to still spend doing the thing that I love, because at some point I have to go home to my family. That's it. But back then I checked thinking, okay, when am I done? When am I done? When can I leave? When can I leave? That is literally the opposite of why I started, but I, at the time, was incapable of realizing that something was wrong. And that's part for the course. The only coping mechanism I had for this life was the gym. I had shut down every other option. So even if that one option remaining was hurting me and was negative, it's the only thing I had left. It's the only thing I knew how to do. It's the only way I knew how to exist. And so this is the one saving grace I had, which is funny because it's not limited to gym selling. Look at the amount of people who have this one toxic behavior in their life that they know is bad, that they know is ruining everything, their relationships and everything, but they're just incapable of letting go of it because it's how we're built. We have a tendency to engage in behaviors that become net negatives, but because they become part of our identity and our routine, we cannot let go of them. And as I said previously, oftentimes we justify this silly behavior by telling ourselves that if we stick to it, then something will happen. If I just can tough it up for another month, then my life will improve. Then I'll finally be happy. Which is also not limited to the gym. Look at the amount of people who have a job they fucking hate, a relationship that is not fulfilling, and instead of realizing, okay, it's time to leave, they tell themselves, oh well, if I can just have this one thing, then I will finally be happy. Then everything in my life will be fixed. And if you remember and retain one thing from this video, I want it to be this. That thing that you tell yourself, that accomplishment that you think is going to fix your life, that milestone that you believe will make you happy, it's a lie. It won't happen. Even if you end up getting there, it still will not make a difference. You'll still be just as miserable. If anything, you'll be more miserable because now you no longer will have that illusion, that mirage to soothe yourself and to tell yourself that maybe in the future things will go better. Now you'll be entirely disillusioned with life. And I know it's a shitty thing to say to people who suffer and who are miserable, but it's a true saying. If you want to be happy now. Happiness is a choice. No amount of material possession, no amount of achievements is going to make someone who is not happy happy. It doesn't work like that. And the same goes for the gym. I know for a fact that many of you out there are shooting for that 3-plate bench, or you're shooting for a 6-pack and you think, okay, this will be the thing. Once that is put in place, then everything else will fall in order. Well, it won't. These are just numbers and cosmetic improvements. They mean nothing if the work that you put in to get these accomplishments didn't improve you as a person. And it's important that you keep that in mind because if you're a man, you most likely have a result-oriented mindset. So you look at the end product and you hyper-focus on that, thinking that it will fix everything once that is done. But you're looking at things the wrong way. You're not looking at the journey that leads you there. Because at the end of the day, it's the journey that makes the product. It's the journey that is going to make it worth it. If you want to pursue fitness, that is tremendous. I encourage you to do so. But make sure that every step of the journey is as joyous as the next and as tremendously elating as the previous. Because if you can't do that, the chances of you sticking to it is slim to none. Most people quit lifting because they're result-oriented, because they had their eyes on that one prize that once they got there, if they even did, none of your insecurities are solved. If anything now, they're stronger than ever. No one is more insecure than a Gymcel. No one is more fucked up in the head than the people who thought that lifting weights was going to be a replacement for a charming personality. And I think deep down, most men know it. Most people who turn into Gymcel's know it. What they do is, because they don't want to have to face that reality, they run away from it instead. But because running away is cowardly, they do it in a way that makes them look good. They do it by embracing what they believe is the grind, but that to me is not the grind. It's literally that you're running away from your problems. And this to me is what defines a true Gymcel. It's someone who uses lifting as a means of escapism instead of using it as a tool to improve the rest of their life. So if you ever find yourself in a position where you find that your training is robbing you of your ability to make connections or pursue other passions, then it might be time to take a step back from your training because then it might actually have become a net negative in your life. I'm personally now in a place in my life where I'm much more balanced, where I spend much more time being social, and I still greatly enjoy the time I spend at the gym. And unsurprisingly, I'm the happiest I've ever been, but curiously enough, it's also the time period in the past 7 years, I'd say, where I made the best gains, where I see the best improvement, and also where I have the healthiest relationship with the gym. Well, now I'm looking forward to every training session. And that is because I'm able to take that step back. Now I'm able to take a week off if I need to. Now I'm able to move a training session if it means spending more time with my family. That doesn't mean I'm not as dedicated as I used to be. If anything now, my dedication focuses on the right things. Because the most important things in life is not the time you spend in the gym. It's not your training, it's the rest. It's what exists around it. Once you realize that, then that dedication that you can put into becoming a better person physically starts to make a lot more sense. And if you're wondering what the big mindset shift was for me, it was my wife. It's all thanks to her. She's the one who very patiently made me realize that I was not in a good place, that I was starting to become compulsive about the gym, and she slowly coaxed me out of this mindset. She slowly made me more flexible. She helped me get rid of that hyper rigidity that had become a life jacket that made it so that I couldn't enjoy my existence anymore. And to a certain degree, she's also the reason why this channel exists, because I don't think I would be a very good educator if I was still stuck in that Gymcel mindset, because I would be way too hyper focused on the gym only, and I would not be able to teach you anything outside of it, which I believe are my best videos. This is where I'm the most helpful for you. So in part, you owe this channel, and I owe this channel and my work to my wife. Now, I don't know if you will be lucky enough to meet an angel like I did, and even if you don't, it's not a problem, because I think that with all of the information I gave you in this video, it should give you enough perspective and enough self-awareness to realize if you're stuck in that predicament, if this is your current fate. And if that's the case, I believe that you have the power and you have the keys to take control back of your life. But that will remain up to you to prove, because the only thing I do on this channel is I give you the key. When it comes time to opening the door, it's on you. And this is what is going to conclude this video in this beautiful nature. I'm freezing my balls off. If you compare the color of my hands at the start and end of the video, you can tell that it's gorged with blood because it's like 20 degrees, something like this. So I'm going to quickly go home and get something warm to drink. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more or to support the channel, you can do so by clicking the first link in the description. It's my coffee page. You can pledge $3 a month if you want. That's already a tremendous help, and it allows me to keep putting in work into these videos. That's going to be it for today's Forest posting. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.